Larry Fink from BlackRock has dropped a bombshell, and this is what you need to know now. And you need to prepare yourself for market changes right now. He said it, and if you remember what happened after Larry Fink's statements in the past, then you know that the surge that's coming will be much bigger than what we're used to. And the reason for today's hype, or rather the upcoming hype, is a flight to quality. With all the chaos, conflicts around the world and so on, more and more people, especially wealthy people, are running to safe assets. Some are turning to government bonds, for example, others to gold or cryptocurrencies, depending on how you see things. And I'm sure Bitcoin will play a very big role here. And I'll tell you what happens next. Even though things don't look so positive right now, they will print as much money as they can to the point that it will make your eyes water. And then Bitcoin will show you just how quickly the fiat world falls apart. And the countdown is ticking more and more. And now, twice as fast as before. And there's no doubt the reckoning for fiat money is coming. And we also know that crises are bad and not helpful. War is a scam, and now they've got real problems on their hands. And we can see in the background that the rules for capital are quietly being eroded behind the scenes. And while that's happening, the state media are shouting about earth-shattering surprises and threats, stirring up a lot of fear. The mask is slipping, and the system is setting off a smokescreen to distract us so we don't see the chaos underneath. Because it's not just about secretly printing money, but also about hidden interest rate manipulation. And now imagine this. Iran's largest bank was just taken down in a cyber attack, and the Iranian crypto exchange Novatex was hacked for $81.7 million. Not your keys, not your money, not your crypto, not your Bitcoin. Remember that. And if you want to protect yourself, click the link in the description below the video. And something is happening right now that will surprise many people, but not Larry Fink from BlackRock, who actually expects Bitcoin to rise to $700,000 per Bitcoin, and that in the near future. And you need to know that fiat money is the problem, and it robs you of the value of your hard work every day, every second. Bitcoin is exactly the opposite. You gain purchasing power every day. Of course, the price fluctuates if you measure it in fiat money, but that only shows how weak fiat currencies like the dollar, euro, and so on really are. Because one Bitcoin remains one Bitcoin, just like 1 ounce of gold remains 1 ounce of gold. And gold is currently reaching new all-time highs, but it's still just 1 ounce of gold. And the global supply increases by maybe 3% a year. That hasn't changed much, not a year ago, not 3 years ago, or even a decade ago, but the price is skyrocketing. And have you ever asked yourself what all of this tells us, or could tell us? It shows you that the world of fiat money, that is, our regular money, is slowly losing trust. Just take a look at Bitcoin compared to gold. Gold has been around forever and is worth several $1 trillion, while Bitcoin is only at about $1.2 or $1.5 trillion. But many believe that Bitcoin will at least reach the value of gold, even though Bitcoin is currently at $1 to $2 trillion. But many believe that Bitcoin will at least reach the value of gold, that is 12, 13, 14, 15 trillion dollars. And that would mean, for example, a 6-fold increase in price. And it doesn't stop at gold. Bitcoin could even surpass the bond market, the real estate market, and the stock market. And then we're talking about a Bitcoin value of 100 trillion, meaning a market capitalization of 200 trillion or even $300 trillion. And that's not so unlikely. Maybe not right away, but it could happen later, especially if they keep printing money. But also pay attention to this. The price of Bitcoin is not what you should be focusing on. That's very important. The price of Bitcoin tells you very little. Much more interesting are things like the hash rate or the difficulty adjustment. Those actually show you how strong and secure Bitcoin really is. And the price is just an indicator of how quickly the fiat system is falling apart. And that's exactly what's happening right now in real time. Fiat money is losing trust and is disintegrating before our eyes. It basically reminds one a bit of the 1930s. Back then, there were also problems with tariffs, debts, and of course powers that challenged each other and wanted to benefit. And Ray Dalio, a major investor, even says that we are currently at a turning point. We could soon be heading toward a recession or even something much, much worse if we're not careful. The value 1930s. What exactly are you warning about? Are you saying that it could get as bad as a depression? What is your greatest fear? Of money. What is the storehold of wealth? That is a bond. In other words, one person's debt is another person's asset bondholders. And so we're going to be in a situation where if that storehold of wealth is
in jeopardy because there's too much supply and demand and so on, and we have a monetary inflation, we will experience major disruptions. And that could be like the breakdown of the monetary system in 71 or like 2008. It's going to be very severe. I think it could be even more severe than those if these other issues happen at the same time. Imagine if we have a downturn, political instability, and an international conflict.
And a recession is simply 2 bad quarters of GDP, but this is about much, much more. The entire monetary system or world order is falling apart. The US, for example, is spending more than it can afford, and so is Germany. And that leads to problems with the dollar, the euro, with tariffs, and of course it also changes the world order as a result. Just like back in the 1930s, history may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And Bitcoin is often seen as an alternative to fiat money, to the dollar, to the euro. And fiat money is the money issued by central banks like the US dollar or the euro. And Bitcoin is different because it is not controlled by a central authority. This also means that it cannot be censored. And if you own Bitcoin, no one can simply take it away from you, as long as you keep your private keys safe. And this is absolutely important because it changes the way people think about money. And central banks like the US Federal Reserve are concerned because more and more countries and people are using Bitcoin, and that could definitely weaken the role of the dollar and, of course, the euro in the global economy. And another important point is that Bitcoin can demonetize violence and war. And that means it makes no sense to use violence to take someone's property because Bitcoin is so secure. And if you store your Bitcoin securely, no one can take it from you, no matter how much force they use. And an example of this is El Salvador. The president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, introduced Bitcoin as legal tender and at the same time took strong action against violence and crime. He put 70 Zero gang members in prison, and it is said that there has been an outbreak of love and peace in El Salvador. And if other countries see this, it could lead them to follow suit as well. They would then very likely experience a similar development as El Salvador. And do you really know what Bitcoin means for the future? Bitcoin is more than just a digital currency. It is changing the world by making violence expensive and peace profitable. And that's because Bitcoin is decentralized and is not controlled by governments or banks, which are in fact controlled by a few. And many experts believe that traditional currencies like the euro, the dollar, the yen, or the Chinese currency will lose value compared to Bitcoin, will continue to lose more and more value, which we can already observe. And that means Bitcoin is becoming increasingly valuable while these currencies lose value. And if you don't understand it, you just need to look up the comparison, Bitcoin to the euro, Bitcoin to the dollar, and so on. Then you'll see how much these fiat currencies are losing value compared to Bitcoin. And if you don't understand this now, don't want to understand it, or don't want to do your research, you could be at a financial disadvantage in the future. So it's important to start getting involved with Bitcoin and crypto now. With Bitcoin, you actually have the opportunity to influence laws and politics. Whoever owns Bitcoin has power. The Bitcoin movement is unstoppable. It's a huge movement and it's accelerating more and more. And many models and predictions will soon be outdated. It's even expected that the price of Bitcoin will rise sharply in the near future. Even Larry Fink assumes this, maybe even up to $1 million per Bitcoin, and that could mean a major change in the financial system.
If you're frightened of your debasement of your currency, or you're frightened of your economic or political stability of your country, you can have an internationally based instrument called Bitcoin that will overcome those local fears. And so I'm a big believer in the utilization of that as an instrument. And so if that becomes true and you see that it could be a proper hedge against maybe say securities or equities. The question is, could you see a 2 or 5% allocation? I was with a sovereign wealth fund during this week, and that was the conversation. Should we have a 2% allocation? Should we have a 5% allocation? If everybody adopted that conversation, then, it would be 500, 0, 600, 0, 700, 0 per Bitcoin. I'm not PR promoting that, by the way. So that is not my promotion or...
And right now, it's especially important to hold your Bitcoin yourself, particularly since we keep seeing again and again that banks or exchanges get hacked. And that means for you should protect your financial assets. Remember, whoever holds Bitcoin makes the rules. The future belongs to Bitcoin. And if you want to build financial independence through Bitcoin and crypto, or want to learn more about it, click the link in the description below the video. Watch the video, it's free and only available like this for a short time. Basically, if you think about it, many conflicts could be avoided with Bitcoin. It's essentially a simple, cost-effective plan that could stop wars and conflicts. I made a video about this some time ago, and there's also an article on how this could be possible. If I find it and the video, I'll publish it here again or talk about it. This is really essential. Because one thing is a fact, the money printing will probably continue, and if that happens, the price of Bitcoin will keep rising. And Bitcoin will then likely become the new global reserve asset. Bitcoin will surpass gold, and it's very likely that this will happen. So Bitcoin will soon be worth more than gold, and currently, Bitcoin is at 100,000 with a market capitalization of $2 trillion. Gold is at around 13, 14, 15, 16 trillion. That means Bitcoin would have to increase 8-fold to catch up with gold as a store of value. And I'm sure that will happen soon in the next few months, maybe even years. Because if you look at the trends, gold is declining more and more compared to Bitcoin. Because one thing is a fact, the war machinery and the fear-mongering have their consequences, and this train with Bitcoin can no longer be stopped.